One of the most horrific Torah portions, can we use that word, is the one that at the time of this recording is approaching us, Qorach. And it's been often referenced as Qorach's rebellion. There's been a long list of rebellions that have taken place in the foundations of our nation. And rebellions are going on even to this day in a variety of types. But Mike, there's something about this Torah portion that just, I don't know, you don't know whether to cry, to shake your head, to get angry.
Yeah.
But I was contemplating this, and I find it interesting what took place just prior to the rebellion of Qorach. We don't know exactly how long maybe it took to develop, but it is in the wake of the failure of the excursion, the tourist excursion into the land, where 10 men came back with a slanderous, maligning report about their inheritance.
Mm-hmm.
And they had just been sentenced by Yah, because of their doubt and unbelief, to walk in the wilderness until they died for 40 years. When Yah hands down judgment, even on his own people, for their unbelief, their stiff necks, and their hardened hearts, it cannot be their fault. It must be the fault of the leadership. Right?
Yeah.
Why is it that when Yah allows the negative circumstances to our sinful patterns to actually develop and come home to roost, as we used to say, why is it always somebody else's fault, especially whoever is in charge or a leader?
Okay, let me go find my psychologist hat here. And oh, I'm sorry, I've never owned one. It comes down to this, Barry. It's a very simple thing. Goes all the way back to Genesis, that Adam blamed Eve, Eve blamed the serpent, and the serpent didn't have a leg to stand on. Okay.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Okay. So this thing of blaming, it's always somebody else's fault. We see this happening in America today. It's always somebody else's fault. We see it all over the world. Okay. You see it in your children. You see it in your grandchildren. You see it. The only place that it's never seen, okay, is in your own mirror.
Right.
That's the only place that, nothing can be my fault. Okay. So these two Torah portions, I lump these two Torah portions into the saddest Torah portions that we have out of the 54, because one of them is a failure of the 10 spies. This one is a failure of on so many levels, Barry, so many levels. How is it that nobody could stand up in the midst of that camp? These Qorach and his 250 renowned men, and it's interesting wording there. I told him this week. It says, men of conspicuous position of the Moedim.
Oh, that's interesting.
Okay, yeah, the word Moed is in there. So these are men that were in charge of leading the people. It appears, I'm going a little tiny bit of speculation here. These are people, these 250 are people that are conspicuous in the leadership of bringing the people into the experience of the feasts and festivals. They're not going against the Torah. They're using the Torah for their own benefit.
Ooh, that never happens.
We had to go there. They're using the Torah, the teaching of the Torah, for their own benefit to bring forth their name instead of the name of Yah. They're not pointing people to Moshe as the leader. They're like, guys, I have my own little interpretation here, and if come over here a little closer, because I don't really want anybody else to hear this. And so, but I'm just going to share with you, because last night in a dream, the Ruach HaKodesh came to me and gave me a revelation. And I've got to be very careful of who I share this with, because not everyone is able to handle this kind of revelation. But I know that you, dear brother, you're one of the spiritually mature, so you can.
You can handle this. Yeah.
You can, yeah. There's a proverb I want to throw in here, and then I'll hand it back to you. Proverbs 24, verse 21. My son, don't get involved with revolutionaries, but fear Yud-He-Vav-He and the king. Be careful that the revolutions that you involve yourself in, are they man's revolutions, or are they Yah's revolutions?
You know, it's amazing that no matter what side of an argument or a debate or issue that you're on, you can claim the sanction of Yah as to support you on your opinion and your side.
Oh, easy.
You know, how many wars have been started because, you know, there's a famous scene in the movie Kingdom of Heaven about when Saladin was attacking Jerusalem, when it was held by those in the Crusades. And there was a fomenting of war by the Templar Knights, and they were crying out, "God wills it, God wills it." You know, and basically, as it was depicted in the movie, it was just a lust for blood.
Mm-hmm.
So, historically, we have claimed that the Father is on our side in our political debates. Is Yah really in one side of the house and not the other? Is he even allowed to come in to those chambers? You know, I won't go down that trail. Let's
that one was too easy.
Let's get out of the weeds here.
God must be on my side. Okay, I'll just run with it just for a moment. God must be on my side because I got a bumper sticker on the back of my car that says God is my co-pilot.
And I've said,
yeah.
Exactly.
If he's your co-pilot, switch seats.
So Qorach is he's a Levite. He's moving out of his own camp by his assigned position. He's moving out of his camp and down into the camp of the Reubenites, looking for allies. He's not man enough to go to Moshe himself and say, Moshe, you and I need to talk. If he had just come to Moshe and say, you know, I'm upset about something. The fact that I was overlooked in the position of the chief or the prince of the Levites for a younger cousin of a younger uncle is upsetting to me. Elizaphan was chosen over Qorach as the prince of the Levites. Elizaphan wasn't even the oldest son in his own family. You know, if you're not, you know, for those who may not be aware, Qorach and Moshe and Aaron are first cousins, according to what's in the book of Shemot. I think it's chapter 7, chapter 6, chapter 7. I'll have to look at that. They knew each other. If he had just come to Moshe and said, why, can you explain to me why this happened? Why was this choice made? Why was I overlooked? It should have been me, in my estimation. Moshe could have gone to Yah and said, can you give us an answer as to your choice? How many lives would have been saved? How much damage? Mike is the ultimate. When he started down in the camp of the Reubenites, the end result of that is some 15,000 people died. We never know when we get on our own little pity train and start fomenting a cause and looking for allies and rallying people to our position, our doctrine, our way of thinking, our interpretation. You never know where the end result may be. How many times has somebody stood up and declared an aberrant doctrine to draw a crowd? And because there are people in front of them with eyes wide open, mouths hung open, and applauding them, they're not aware, and they don't take time to think about how many relationships they just divided, how many homes that they've upset, how many congregations that have now entered into a place of turmoil because people are taking sides on one side or the other of their new doctrine. Yes, you've gotten applause. Yes, you've gotten a following, but you've also divided the body of Messiah.
Well, give me an example. You're familiar with this area that I live in, Franklin. You were here for a Sukkot. It was not that many years ago. I think it was somewhere right after you were here for Sukkot that a so-called teacher, I won't name a name, but came into this area and started teaching on the lunar Shabbat, on flat Earth, and all these other things. The ripple effects of that teaching is still a stronghold in this area today. There are people today that are not talking to each other because of, and will not trust each other because of that teaching. And this has been over 10 years ago.
After we were there in 2003, incredible Sukkot, excuse me. An amazing group of people, a variety of backgrounds and ethnicities and cultures. We had Native Americans, we'd have African Americans, we had an Orthodox Jew, we had other Jewish folks, more Ephraimite varieties than you could shake a stick at. I mean, it was incredible.
Oh, yeah.
Right after that, aberrant doctrines started taking people away. The next Sukkot was with the same group, and a lot of those faces were not there because, well, we see it differently now, and we're not coming back.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And I can go through and tell you areas. It's like the back in early 2000s, the Front Range of Colorado was thought to be the next kind of, headquarters for Ephraim deal. I mean, this was going to be the so-called Mecca of, and I don't like the word there, but of the Messianic movement. Right now, you can't hardly find a congregation there that's worth attending. And it's every time, and I will tell people this, if you have a congregation, and I'm very much aware of this at the moment, if you have a congregation that's doing something, that's growing in, not in numbers, but in the revelation of the Almighty, do not be surprised when someone comes in and attacks that. It is the Qorach rebellion, okay? Qorach will always be looking for a place.
Yeah.
Now, here's the truth of the issue. That the Qorach rebellion once again raised its head in the book of Acts. The Qorach rebellion raised itself in the person of Marcion, in the person of of Constantine, of many of the church fathers. Because the Qorach rebellion does that. And this is the fascinating thing about Qorach and about the spirit of Qorach. He is a leader that will never take you forward, but will always take you backwards.
Mm. Think about this, Mike. What if Qorach had succeeded?
Mm.
What if there had been,
in the book,
what if there had been an overthrow and his argument was given validity and sanction here? He went to Moshe and Aaron and said, you guys have taken on positions for yourselves that are illegitimate. You're claiming too high a seat. And there needs to be parity. Everybody should be equal.
mm-hmm.
The redistribution, not of wealth here, but of authority and power and ability to discern and have revelation. Everybody is equal. What is he saying? We're all leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone in Israel is a leader of equal standing and equal ability. That used to be years ago, many years ago, when I was in denominational affiliations, leaders where there was a problem in a church, some church official would come in and say, anything with two heads is a freak. Well,
Mm-hmm.
anything without a head is going to die. You can't have leaderless growth or consistency. The idea, it comes back to something that we have talked about ad nauseum here. We have to get over our anger and resentments and bitterness against whatever leadership problems we had, wherever it was that we came from. And we've carried over, well, I don't want to pay somebody to be our leader, or I don't think anybody ought to be in charge, or I don't want anybody tell me what I need to believe. I don't want anyone to have authority over me. All of the arguments. Yet Yah consistently throughout Scripture, from the beginning to the end, has always established that there has to be a shepherd, there has to be a leader. Mm-hmm. What do we do with the Scripture in the book of Ephesians that says that he gave to us the gifts of apostles and prophets and evangelists and pastors and teachers? If he didn't, if we reject that, we're going against his word. Or people who have leadership calling on their lives perfect. No. If you have a leader, they're going to make a mistake. It's just the human nature of the thing. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to come up with a vantage point on a scripture that we may have to come back and say, I've been studying further on that, and I'm not happy with what was said. So let's go back and let's look at this. There's nothing wrong with studying with your leader, but also behind your leader. That if something is taught and you find contrary scripture, or at least what it appears to be, the goal is not to set yourself up in the next congregational meeting and say, I got you. Mm-hmm. Let's not call them out in an embarrassing situation. Go to them personally and say, you said this last week or last month, and I'm trying to figure out how this scripture aligns with what you were saying. They may be, need to be corrected in something. They should have, if someone offers you a scripture or a text that invalidates what you said, go back and fix it. There's nothing wrong with doing that. You don't lose any points. But study, show yourself approved, do the best that you can. Not everybody is the best of scholars. Not every small home group or congregation has somebody with a lot of theological degrees on their wall to where they got it all under their belt.
And some do have a lot of people with theological degrees on their wall, and
Still
have
don't know
no
anything.
clue of anything that's going on. Yeah. Yeah. The whole thing of leadership, as you said, we have talked about this so many times. But the rebellion of Korach is basically taking the people backwards. Moshe, you said, and there's a seed of truth here. Here's the problem, Barry. There's a seed of truth. You said you're going to take us to a land flowing with milk and honey, and you haven't done that. Well, that's true. But hey, Korach, it ain't Moshe's fault that you guys aren't standing in the land of milk and honey yet. It's the 10 spies and all the others that went along with them. It's not Moshe's fault. So, my point is this. Look at the leadership you're following and ask yourself, are they taking me forward or are they taking me backwards? I don't want to go back to church. I don't want to.
That's what Dathan and Abiram said. If you look in chapter 16, it says,
as you're looking at that, let me say this. When I just said I don't want to go back to church, I'm thankful for the foundation that I was given in the denominations that I was brought up in, both as a child and spiritually. But I don't want to go back there because it was not the land of milk and honey. It was a land of bondage. And so I don't, anybody that's want to take me backwards, I'm not going with them. Whatever. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, that's where I was going, is that they were claiming that Mitzrayim
Yeah.
was a land of milk and honey, and you took us out of a land of milk and honey to take us to a different one.
Oh yeah.
You don't you remember your chains and your whipped backs?
Yeah. No, it's don't you remember, Barry, the great fellowship that we had and the wonderful worship services we had? And don't you remember the Saturday, the fifth Sunday sang, depending on what part of the country you're from? Don't you remember those wonderful times? Yes, there were some wonderful times, but those times did not line up with the word of Yah. They did not line up with the Torah of Moshe. In the end, the rebellion is not Moshe, but the Torah that he brought down from Mount Sinai.
Okay, the argument could be made then. Okay, Barry, you led us out of where it was that we were to bring us into the Torah with the promise that the Torah would make things better.
Yeah.
The Torah has not produced milk and honey for us. It has only produced division from our family members, upset with our work schedules. I can't eat what I want, what we used to eat in the restaurant, but now we got to be all super picky about everything. And, we get in these congregational settings and all we do is argue about whether Skittles are kosher or not, or whether, this version of the text is better than the other version, and meanings of words, and et cetera, et cetera. All we do is argue. So how is this better? If that is the case, if that's all that we're focused on, then I understand the upset. Torah and its study needs to be improving our lives. If lives are not better, if we do not have a clearer understanding of Scripture, if we're not walking in a closer relationship with our Messiah, if we're not seeing Yeshua revealed in the pages of the Torah, then I understand why Qorach is going to rise up and be mad. If we are leaders, our people have to have better fruit to eat than where it was that they were.
Yeah, but if you came into this walk thinking that everything was going to be wonderful, and life was going to be good. And it's like the guy that said, just accept Jesus and everything will be great. Really? To quote a close friend who just passed away, Mr. Alan Stanfield, I just mentioned him. And now I've mentioned him on every program. He was an incredible man. Was he perfect? No. But he's the one that is responsible for the Shema Israel Facebook group. He's the one that taught me that in the first place. He was one of my spiritual fathers. And there was a post about his death the other day, and my favorite comment was from Daniel Botkin. Daniel said that years ago he was at the first conference that he met Alan and Roberta Stanfield at, and Alan, they were talking, and Daniel said, "So what? Tell me about the walk that you've had." He says, "Well, I was a Baptist pastor, and then I got the revelation of Shabbat, and I came home and I said to my wife, we're going to make a change in our life, but it's not going to be hard. I mean, the only thing we're doing is changing the day from Sunday to Saturday." And he had this pregnant pause, and he said, "Boy, was I wrong." Yeah. The person that told you just receive Jesus and life's going to be wonderful, they lied. The person that told you if you just use his right name and everything's going to be wonderful, they lied. The person that said just embrace the Torah and that walk and everything's going to be fine, they lied. There's nothing in Scripture that tells us that life is to be easy. In fact, Yeshua said, "I have not come to bring shalom. I've come to bring a sword." And that sword will divide families. You look at the prophets, the writings, the people of Hebrews chapter 11. None of these people had an easy life, but they had a life that was worth something because their life ended with "well done, my good and faithful servant." Are we looking for easy? Or are we looking for the words "well done"?
Yeshua said, "In this world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world." I've asked this question many times. Did you think you were going to get into the kingdom without a fight, without a scar? Are we just going to step off of a carpeted floor onto the paved streets of Jerusalem without any turbulence in between? No. Qorachs are going to come and they're going to go. The argument that Qorach presented was everybody should be able to have their own Torah. Mm-hmm. Everyone should be able to discern the word of Yah for themselves and write their own Torah according to what they believe he is saying.
We can all do what was right in our own eyes. Well, how's that worked out in the past?
It's confusion. It's chaos. You can't have the stability of a functioning community the way the Torah describes, where everybody's in charge. There is a great lack here, Mike, and we've talked about this before as well. We've had teachers. We've had buckets full of teachers. The prayers that we should be offering up, Father, give us shepherds. He prophesied in Jeremiah 23, I believe it's Ezekiel chapter 34, that he's going to raise up shepherds after his own heart. Father, raise up those shepherds, those caregiving, nurturing, growing, flock attending, guarding shepherds who will give stability and foundation to your people, so that they can stand and grow and reproduce. That's what we have to have.
Yeah.
Mike, we got about 3 minutes. Your closing thoughts?
Not everybody's going to be a shepherd. You got to have sheep. And a shepherd is not going to be the friend of all the sheep all the time. A shepherd's going to have to stand and give a word of correction, If the leader that you have is only makes you feel good all the time, that's not really a shepherd. Because sometimes a shepherd's going to take you out and say, we've got to make some changes here. You're eating weeds. You're eating poison. And the shepherd cares for the sheep more than the sheep care for the sheep. Watch out for Qorachs in our day. Watch out for them. They're there. And sometimes they're dressed in sheep's clothing. Like they look like a shepherd. They try to look like a Moshe, but their attitude's a Korah. Discern the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Folks, we really appreciate those who watch and those who share on your social media pages. We do read your comments. They are encouraging. If you have questions, we'd love to try to respond to them. So please feel free to share with us your opinion and your understandings. We'd love to hear them. Mike, we've been down the road again.
Yeah.
Yep. We look forward to seeing you again next week, folks. To them, shalom.
Shalom.